First post of today.
These are the what do we call them?
What do they call them in my post? I call them something. The Reddit report. The War Within Reddit report. All right. So what's up? Today, we're going to be covering the War Within and the topics on the Reddit page that I find interesting, but also can bring up discussion, as well as interesting topics. I think some of these address some of the greater points of contention within WoW, and that they're important to be addressed because these things affect a wide range of people. Reddit, War Within. Yeah, the Reddit is a war within. That's very true. So this first one is talking about why are players so unhelpful and toxic. This has been something I think that's been a thing since Mythic Plus existed. But says this druid, bot druid, what the WTF are you doing, druid? Druid LMAO. How the fuck am I supposed to know what am I doing wrong when this is the advice? I don't even want to tank raids or dungeons because I know people will just be like this and I don't want to ruin my day, but now it's happening in PvP too. So I guess I won't be participating in any MMO activities in this game. I feel bad for the new players if this is the experience you're going to get in the War Within. The edit comes later, but basically this is where I think, and we're going to talk about this later, but I think this is where the positivity towards delves come from. Like delves can do no wrong, even if they're good, even if they're bad, because honestly, like approaching mythics, even for someone like me, is abrasive. It's an abrasive experience that if you're not well educated in, you can't learn on the job. You very much need the add-ons. You need to have watched the videos. You need to have watched, like the guides for your particular role. It's kind of unfortunate, but it's just kind of the way it is. And it goes even further, people can judge your gear or your spec or even your class. So honestly, it's a very tough thing to deal with. And honestly, like my advice would be give people one chance. Their first message isn't kind and ignore them. Honestly, that's kind of true in a way, because people are going to let you know how shitty of a person they're going to be pretty much right out of the gate. So like there's not too much of changing their opinions, except for if you're a classic player. If you played back in the day, then people would see your stuff and they would see your gear or see like your gameplay, and you could respond to it with being like just equally as toxic, and then you're like best of friends, and then like shit moves on. I think WoW players nowadays are a little bit too soft to handle that kind of shit, or they say shit like, you don't pay my sub, and that kind of like pushes things forward. But I don't know. Wait, hold on. What does it say? 10 out of 10 Zal's feet on full display. Yo, that's always the best thumbnail. I'm just saying. As lore master and a player of 17 years, I can say things in this game have gotten worse and worse. I remember in Wrath, it was always something that happened. We joke about it and give people who try to pull it in trade or dungeon shit for it. Nowadays, you see so many people screw with each other over and over just in the world. I've avoided all the multiplayer content. And I kind of get this impression, or this idea that over time when you play the game, I think your tolerance for like other people's like their disgruntlement, like that type of thing, like that you just don't have a tolerance to deal with it anymore. I get it to a degree, because it's like, honestly, you just want to do your thing and just move on. And a lot of times people are very dramatic and exaggerated when it comes to mythic content, when it's often very easy. But the issue comes into like later content when it actually starts to get difficult. I think some people truly, this is a problem with WoW. Nobody learns anything from Mythic 1 to Mythic, maybe they get like hard at like Mythic 7. Nobody like really learns anything. And then when things actually get too tough to where if you mess up one mechanic, you're gone. People are like, well, it's your fault for being mad at me. I think people placate blame onto the people who are getting upset versus themselves. But additionally, the game doesn't do a very good job of, before you hit that sort of difficulty barrier, I don't know if it's exactly Mythic 7s, but before you hit that barrier, basically being like easy breezy mode, like it doesn't matter your team setup, doesn't matter your spec, doesn't matter how good you are, like you'll figure it out. And then all of a sudden it's too difficult, and any step could be like your last type of thing. So nowadays, one misstep and you're out of the group and reported to. Screw helping people and grow and help and show up in the game. Yeah, and I think a lot of people think that being a tank or a healer is like this lofty position within World of Warcraft because you get groups faster, but in reality, they're the first to be judged if something goes wrong. Now, that being said, being a DPS isn't a lofty position either because who are they going to blame first if you complete or if you say you bust on time? They're going to blame DPS first, typically. Of that or tank, I guess, you know, because tank maybe doesn't pull enough, I guess. But then again, tanks get blamed for pulling too much. It's sort of a weird balance. This game used to bring people together. I've heard of people finding friends in WoW, and when they had a hard time socially in public, this game helped people, gave them a sense of normalcy when they came to friendship. When it's hard for people to do this toxicity has killed that, forced people not to want to play with other people, and made soloing this game more of a norm. Honestly, I mean, soloing this game and enjoying like soloing content has been a thing since Mists of Pandaria. I wouldn't say this is necessarily the expansion that did it. It's definitely happened over time, and wanting to play the content solo is not necessarily a bad thing. I think people do take solace and comfort in playing older content and doing that. But when people do want to do delves over doing dungeons and mythics, that does kind of reflect on the quality of grouping content. But it's also hard for me to place that blame fully on the culture of mythics and mythic dungeons. In all honesty, I feel like that started with things like looking for group, looking for raid, like having these auto grouping features in the game because people just don't have tolerance for doing that. It used to be back in the day, by the time you got a group together, you've kind of made friendships, like you've made conversation, or maybe the group took a while to get put together. Maybe someone dropped out and it took you a while to get another set up. Like you just knew that a good group did come around all the time, and it really wasn't a thing. Like it wasn't a thing in original Burning Crusade just to spam dungeons and run dungeons after dungeons. Now, in the classic WoW, re-release, of course, spamming dungeons became more of a thing, and we still had that culture because we still didn't have auto grouping. But nowadays, when you have auto grouping, there's honestly no incentive for anybody to try to make a group work, to try to go, hey, this person is clearly struggling with these mechanics. Let me tell them something. And people don't really want to deal with new players. I don't think this is a player-based issue. I think this is partially a consequence of having auto grouping because you can just auto group with somebody else. So honestly, what is the solution to this and this type of demeanor and this type of attitude with stuff like this? Why people are unhelpful and toxic? This is clearly a player who isn't doing well. Like they don't understand what's going on. They didn't, do their research and figure things out. One is of course something I always advocate for. Outside of add-ons, there needs to be an understanding of how a boss is supposed to be handled. I don't care if some like a character like Bran runs into the dungeon and goes, hey, like this is how you do it, like some shit like that. But like currently the adventure guide is helpful, but I think sometimes people need that little extra leg up, and they don't have like 1,000 weak auras set up and maybe just more than deadly boss mods set up. I would say for the most part, you can get away with just having deadly boss mods for quite some time, at least until you figure things out. But a lot of people, I mean, they struggle to learn. I mean, a lot of us as well are classic players who simply take longer to learn things. I mean, I'm older now, and it's harder for me to get these things. I will say something that I'm proud of is that, like, when I go into groups, I can understand a mechanic quicker if I've seen it before, or if I understand it before. Like, repetition is great for me. Like, I'm really good at it. If I see it once, I've seen it 1,000 times. So like, I jump into like a tier 8, tier 7, tier 8 delve. I'm like, yep, I get it. Like I mess it up once, I get it. Yep, easy. And it's all done. Now, some people just don't have the tolerance for you to mess up once, and that kind of sucks. But that's kind of the way it is. I will say that's not everybody. I will say what does people a lot of good, though, is just being honest right off the forefront. Like, hey, I don't know these things. If there's anything that I need to do in these fights, just let me know. Just be honest if you fucking suck. And you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Don't try to get away with that shit. It's just better to be honest instead, and then fucking move on. And then and that shit will fucking deal with it. Back in the day, we would disguise our voices when we were 15 trying to get into the fucking guild raids. And we would be like, oh yeah, how do you do this shit? And we would lower our voices and shit. But you still say, I don't know what the fuck to do. It's just back then, we didn't have as many resources as we do now, where everyone can look up all the fights and understand everything that's going on. Easy peasy. So it's like, it's different now. The culture is different now. And so you still kind of got to do something about it. You can't just be like, well, I just hope it works out. Like you can't do that anymore. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work, unfortunately. And I think it's just the way it is. So that's my